Welcome everyone to SoCal Loopers, and it's Wednesday evening, and we're good to go. I'll do the usual disclaimer, which is Loop app is a do-it-yourself closed-loop algorithm and user interface developed through the work of community volunteers. While it may seem obvious, please consult with your healthcare professionals regarding your diabetes management. Remember, it's important to remember this, that Loop is a highly experimental project and it is not FDA approved for therapy. Therefore, you take full responsibility for building and running your system, and you do so at your own risk. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit further that I kind of wanted to give a SoCal Loopers disclaimer about tonight and the presentation you're going to hear. For those of you who are on Looped and have been in the Loop community for a while, you're aware that a lot of this is all done as volunteer work, and then there are people that are looking to pay people for help, and we totally understand that because setting up on Loop it can be very challenging. So tonight we're going to be hearing from Ben West, who is starting up a business that is a for-pay service. And while we're not recommending or endorsing it, we think you should hear it because Ben is an interesting and significant person in the DIY community. He is very knowledgeable as one of the original developers of Nightscout. And I think you should listen to what he has to say and just understand his perspective, where he came from and what he's talking about and why. It's important, it's interesting. So take your time, listen carefully. The rules of tonight are, as always, please keep yourself muted. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, and Glenn, Sarah, I will get the questions over to Ben and his dad, Earl. And so let me give you a quick introduction. Ben West was former director of Nightscout Foundation, is an advocate for open science and open source. Research interests include interaction between technology and society and measuring fidelity of therapy. What does that mean? He'll tell you. He's a member of the original CGM and the Cloud team and an original lead core developer for the Nightscout Project. He goes way back on Nightscout. I met him very much towards the beginning, and his heart and soul were in this project. He's interested in making this a forum for everyone to use to increase your liberty and decrease burden of living with diabetes. He himself has type 1 diabetes, diagnosed in 2003 while he was a college student. College will do that to you. Formerly a software engineer with Dexcom and a few other companies, including Alexa. He has 5 US patents, and he's currently starting a new company or new service called T1Pals, which is a managed Nightscout service with a startup guide, managed private storage, and unlimited shares for a monthly subscription. He's in business with his dad, Earl West, who's also online tonight. And I'm going to open it up to Ben to tell us what he's been doing, what he's interested in sharing with us. And you got it, Ben. Take it away.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Joanne. And I'm really excited to be here tonight with the SoCal Loopers group. Yeah, that first night, I think it was in Irvine.
It was in Irvine.
Joanne was there at the Microsoft Center.
Yeah.
And that was very early on. That was one of the first, that had to be within the first 5 presentations on Nightscout. And at that time, I remember Microsoft helped us out a lot with securing some space and things like that.
Yep.
So I'm going to try to...
Your whole team showed up for that. They flew in from wherever they were and showed up for that presentation, which was pretty wild. And I think that day we put 14 people up on Nightscout. So it was interesting.
Well, I'll just start it. So I was hoping tonight we'd have basically three parts, if that's all right with everyone. And I'd like to start first with kind of a catch up, kind of maybe fireside chat, if you will, about kind of what I've been doing over the last few years. Rewind a little bit and share what I've been working on recently, which is T1Pal. And then, if possible, I'd like to open it up for discussion and questions and answers, and maybe even some participatory design, some brainstorming if we have time. So, um, first is I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was in college, finishing up college, and at the time I actually wanted to go into music. I had had a long study in the humanities and in music. And when I graduated, by that time I had type 1 diabetes, and I figured, well, those are great areas to study and to enjoy, but I really need health insurance to pay for insulin and medical supplies. And I got on a pump right away, and I went into industry as a software engineer. And I worked for Alexa Internet early on out in San Francisco. I don't know if for the older folks might remember, they had a toolbar that would track everywhere you visit, and it would tell you for every website you visit, how popular is that website, how many people actually go there. And so we worked on the toolbar that was at Alexa, and over the years we worked on things that eventually started being called the cloud. So inevitably it was called the cloud. Amazon rolled out with a bunch of web services, and I was among the first to actually use big data and the cloud before it was even called that. From there, I went on to Meraki, and Meraki had this thing that now is known as software-defined networking, and we were bought by Cisco. But at the time, it was brilliant. They had a web page that you could share, because it was a web page, and you could share that link with your technical support staff. And the technical support staff might be the people that run the network, so the people in the office building that run the network, or they might be the people that own the equipment. But instead of having this weird conversation on the phone that said, hey, it's not working, well, what's not working? And it's like, I don't know, the lights aren't blinking. Instead of that, now we had information on a web page where everyone with the web page could see the same version of the same problem. And I remember it was like my first or second week working with this group, this cream of the crop from MIT, and realizing this was exactly what was needed in the diabetes landscape. And so that was back in 2010. And that really got me thinking about my involvement in diabetes as well. So let's go to slide 2 if the screen share is working.
It is. Good job.
So that got me thinking about my role in diabetes. And in 2010, 2009, I believe it was actually, I tried out a Medtronic CGM. And I don't know about a lot of you, but I remember waiting for access to CGM with bated breath and just expecting the access of CGM to change everything. And of course, the first generation CGM products that we had access to didn't provide the relief that I personally was looking for. I actually tried the Dexcom CGM and I lost it in a taxi cab. And I explained that, like, look, the thing's not attached to me. You're asking me to carry around like this extra device. After 4 things in my pocket, I start to lose them. And so I had gone on this trial with Dexcom, lost the receiver, and did not get any of the benefit of the data analysis at the end of it. And a couple months after that, I actually decided, let's just stay on slide 2 for now. I decided, this is fine. Let's try Dexcom. And I had Medtronic after a few months after that, and I had the Medtronic integrated pump, CGM, etc. And I found, much to my horror, that as I grew to rely on the system, I was bolusing extra insulin when the CGM, told me that I was high, above 250 or whatever, and I would bolus extra insulin. And then, of course, several hours later, I'd be extra low, and then having to stuff my face with carbs to recover from the low. And I decided, this is craziness. Somehow, even though there's all these gadgets, and I got the best technology that money could buy, somehow the burden that I'm experiencing and the quality of life that I'm experiencing is actually getting worse. I'm getting these sores on my skin, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night. And I don't have to tell you guys, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. And that's really what activated me. Actually, it was that moment I realized I'm never using a CGM again until I have access to the data. And several years roll along, I was working for Meraki, and I worked with my dad, Earl, here, and we started working on the pumps and the meters. And sure enough, we started yielding quite a bit of success with the pumps and the meters. And that's how we really got started. This journey really starts way back in 2010. And if we fast forward to 2014, 2015, that's when things really started to get very, very exciting. So Nightscout had come out. We were presenting in 2013 and 2014. And then OpenAPS came out because, of course, we had already been hacking with the insulin pump data. And so it was a very natural progression to say, okay, what needs to happen, the missing technology in the diabetes landscape right now is just simply access to the data and patient burden. And sure, there's a whole bunch of other things. There's provider burden, there's interpretation of the data. But right now, if you got no data, you can't do any interpretation of the data. So let's create an ecosystem, right, that ensures that the data can flow wherever it needs to flow. And that's what really started this whole journey with We Are Not Waiting. I met up with Lane, met up with John Kostick, met up with Dana Lewis and Scott Librand. And it was just one natural step after the other. Once you've got the glucose, you add the insulin. Once you've got the insulin, let's put it all on the same page. Let's monitor it. And then at the time, we had a mantra of monitor, predict, control, right? So first you monitor things, then you make your predictions, and then finally you add algorithms to control things. So let's move on to slide 3.
They're not numbered, so I don't know. What's the top?
Oh, well, it looks like slide 1.
Okay. Okay, got it. Controls are touchy, sorry.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Good, thank you so much. Okay, so that's led me to the last few years, right? So the last few years I've been working for Dexcom. I helped found Tidepool, created Nightscout and OpenAPS, and then went to Dexcom to try to work with all of the connected insulin partners that Dexcom works with. That was a dream come true, to be able to talk with all the different insulin pump companies, all the connected pen companies, and really see what is it like, what challenges does industry face? I know what challenges patients are familiar with because I'm one of them, but I also wanted to see what are the challenges that's really holding up things from the inside, right? And so the last several years, 3 years since 2016, I've spent at Dexcom doing exactly that, learning how the medical industry works, what's needed, why are these things actually absent? Why are the things that we're doing in Nightscout, why are they absent from industry? And I think we've come up with a couple things that we know are important. And so now we're forming this new company, Medical Data Networks, to support these kinds of things. And so we'll get into more of these. We mentioned high fidelity healthcare. I'm sure we're going to get more into that. Okay, very good. So that leads us to introducing this first thing. Our familiarity is with developing dashboards that are on the web, that provide real time, that are interoperable, that provide multiple people with the same view of the same problem. And so now we've done a lot of research, and now what we want to do is make sure of a couple things. We want to make sure that the access to this technology is more equitable. And so we can talk about what we mean by that. One thing is that there should be a way to use Nightscout where it's private. And that's part of the ethical piece as well. You should not be forced, if you want to take advantage of the features of getting Nightscout to your lights, of getting Nightscout to your phone, of getting Nightscout to your refrigerator, of getting Nightscout to your car, of getting Nightscout to your voice-activated smart gadgets. Those are all fantastic things that really drive the adoption of technology, and it really makes sure that the technology is actually conforming into the personalization that's required. It conforms to your lifestyle rather than you have to twist your lifestyle into into getting the value of the technology. So of course, we're familiar with this, right? With the Alexa plugins, with the overrides, all of the rich plugins are a huge part of the Nyko ecosystem. So we wanted to offer a way to have Nightscout where it's actually private. And it turns out that actually solves a number of the things that FDA was looking for. So I worked with FDA when we started up the Nightscout Foundation. We discussed the Nightscout project with the FDA, and this was one of the things that they requested. So we actually think that it's possible to protect the Nightscout community by doing these things, that by providing support and by paying engineers that are going to do the R&D for Nightscout, and by ensuring that industry and regulators understand and respect the value that these solutions bring to patients. So I guess with that said, that's a little bit about kind of what we've been doing. And now what I'd like to do is walk through some of the new things that T1Pal as a service offers. So the things that we're kind of talking about. And one of the new things in particular is the setup guide. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes going through the new way that we've created to start Nightscout. I'm aware that the kind of going wisdom right now is that setting up Nightscout could take up to 2 hours. And so our goal is really to get that down into like under 10 minutes, to not need to know any technology at all, and to make this accessible to anyone that wants it. So that said, we're not taking away at all from the do-it-yourself. We actually strongly believe in the do-it-yourself community, and we don't want to take anything away from that. We actually believe that the more people that are using Nightscout, doesn't matter if it's hosted by us or if it's hosted by someone else or if it's DIY, we actually think that the more people using Nightscout, the stronger our diabetes community will ultimately be. And so that's a big part of this. So let's go through the next couple slides, because I'd like to show how this works. So we do have a sign up process. You go through the sign up process. It's about 4 steps to get through. Okay, and that just involves signing in through Google, and that's kind of what we're showing here. You pick the product, you sign in, and you go through a checkout process. And at that moment, you click OK. That means that Nightscout is actually completely created for you. So the typical creation of Nightscout, having to go through all these different steps, those are all done already at this point. So at this point, what happens is there's a couple different ways to get started. There's, as you know, step 1 is Nightscout has been designed to show CGM traces, to follow CGM traces to show glucose in real time. And so by default, that means that you might not want insulin. It is possible to use Nightscout, so that the only thing that you ever want to look at is CGM traces. And so that's the default experience. There's kind of 2 ways to do that. One is to sign in through Dexcom Share, and that's kind of the default way that we'll go through now. And the other is if you're using OpenAPS or something like that, you need to upload your glucose as well. But so if we go to the next slide here, that's right. So this is what it looks like when you're signing in to Dexcom. And so if we go to the next slide, this is as we sign into Dexcom with the next slide, this is what it looks like when that's done. And then we go back to the welcome guide after that. That's right. So at this point, all the CGM data is going into Nightscout, and we could actually visit Nightscout and see that the glucose values are in there. And so that's the new way to start with the basic glucose monitoring. And then assuming that most people use Nightscout for not just glucose, of course, we use it to track all the insulin treatments in real time as well and provide all the reports. So that's what this next step is all about, is turning this on. So if we turn on all the insulin treatments, then the next slide shows us that we can go to, if we go to the next slide, that's right. So this goes to the next slide, and we have these. This is the uploaders area where usually this is how insulin gets into Nightscout, either from something like Android APS. Let's keep it on that slide. Let's keep it on that. Okay, that's fine. So usually it's something like Android APS or Loop or something like, or Open APS, something along those lines. So the key idea here is to get the Nightscout information into one of those apps, and these screens help walk through that. There's actually a part of the welcome guide here is a tool that checks to see if the new data is actually coming in, so that you get the feedback as to whether or not that's working. So if we go to the next slide, yeah, that's right. So the original Nightscout uploader and Android, not Xtrip, and the original Android uploader had these QR codes that make it easy to scan in there. And if we keep going to the next slide here, that's right. So once the data comes in, the site notices and gives you this feedback. And if we go to the next slide, this basically wraps up the setup. So this is intended to be much easier. You don't have to worry about any databases or anything like that. So we hope this helps people get set up a lot faster and gets the people that were not able to get started with Nightscout. We hope this removes any of the barriers that they might have been facing. So that's just what we've got to start. And then, of course, so that's what I wanted to kind of introduce as a new way to get started with Nightscout. The idea is that this supports the developers of Nightscout, and that when we support the developers, of course, the software actually gets better as well in a very predictable way. Okay, and this is a good, important view to show off as well. This is, in addition to the setup, we have this sharing feature. So, of course, Nightscout is no good if you're the only person that can look at it. That is, when we say that it's private, that is part of what we mean, is that by default, only the person that created the account has permission to look at that Nightscout. And that's something that's enforced. Of course, we want to enable social media and combine more of these social experiences more tightly integrated with the healthcare experience. And so that's what this is intended to do. This creates a number of URLs similar to how Google Docs works, where if you share your Google Doc with someone, you can make it so that anyone with that URL has access to view your document. And that's very much how this works as well. You can create as many of these as you like. You can share them with whoever you like. And then when you're done sharing them, you can actually just delete them anytime you like. So you can create one for the clinic, one for your doctor, one for the babysitter, one for the nurse, share it with them. And if you decide to get a new nurse, or you're done with the coach for that year and you get a new school coach, you can just eliminate the old one and create a new one. Okay, so next slide just shows the menu that's available for managing Nightscout. Again, we hope this is a little bit simpler than going to managing 3 different accounts on 3 different websites. And if we go forward 2 more slides, I believe. So that's all I really had. That's all I really had prepared to share at this time. I wanted to share a new way to get started with Nightscout. The things that we've been working on over the last 10 years, really, and then kind of point where this might go in the future. So, we have a very savvy audience with us tonight, and as we know, we've actually talked about this a bit, Joanne, that the technology is great, okay, and advanced features that make it fit into my lifestyle, that's great also. But really, when we look at the state of diabetes today, there's these huge holes that are still missing, and we think that this is a good starting place to start filling in those holes. First of all, you've got to have the data. If there's no data, you can't make any decisions, you can't share any discussions, and so that's got to be the first thing. And then we see that there's a lot of trouble with these other things as well, whether it's technical support for getting devices working, getting data into the cloud, or getting the devices working. We know people that have trouble wearing the CGM sensors. Sometimes when you put on a new CGM sensor, the new CGM sensor will bleed. That's normal for a certain percentage of new CGM sensors. But some people have so much trouble with the technology that when they see, for example, one of those sensors start to bleed, they actually are concerned that that's not working anymore. And so they actually need help to understand that actually everything's fine. You can, if it's a little bit of blood, that's normal, just wipe it away, and that will still work. And that is the kind of support that the Facebook community offers so well today that sometimes is missing. Especially from industry, especially if the industry affiliates don't fully understand the situation where that patients are coming from. And so that's an area where we think we understand given the data, we believe that we can connect some of these solutions better to the people that need them. And ultimately, that's where as a business, that's where we will, that's really where we're going to concentrate in terms of our revenue, such that our revenue doesn't really depend on Nightscout hosting. It really depends on these other things working with industry. But in order for those things to work, we need industry to recognize the value that things like Nightscout brings. So I don't know how many people saw the announcement today of Tandem acquiring SugarMate, and I think that is exactly the kind of thing that we're looking to see as we wave the we are not waiting rallying cry. So many times, Wes and others remind industry that we don't really want to be doing this, right? What we want is for industry to be serving our needs, and we think. I'll just leave it at this, and we'll open up for a discussion. But we think that this is a critical step to make that happen, delivering the benefits directly from the patient community and ensuring that they go into enterprise and ensuring that the process by which that happens is protected for the future. So, okay, that's all I've got, Joanne, and I would absolutely love to get feedback, feature requests, concerns, brainstorm,
Okay,
you name
I'm
it.
ready for this. First question someone asked is, how much does it cost?
Oh, okay, yeah. Right now, our beta pricing is $11.99 per month, and we have a coupon that lowers the price to $9.99 per month for the first 3 months, I believe. So it's $9.99 for the first 3 months and 4 months. $9.99 for the first 4 months, and then $11.99 after. And we're open to some discussion on that as well. We have to, again, we're paying for we're paying for these machines that have to be up and running all the time, and so that's in addition to the we need help to get this thing going, and so that's why there is an initial fee.
So if you pay with a coupon for 4 months, you get it at $9.99, and then it goes up. Is there a quarterly amount you could pay at a discounted rate or an annual amount?
Yeah. So we are definitely open to suggestions along those lines. If annual makes more sense, does semi-annual make more sense? Does quarterly make more sense? We are definitely looking to adjust to make this fit as best as possible.
Okay. I've been typing in questions. Glenn's got a couple. First question is, what happens at sign-in if you already have a Nightscout account? So many people on SoCal Loopers are already set up on Nightscout, and several have been on for a long time. So if we come to your sign-in, do we get a new Nightscout account, or do you work with what we already have?
I'm trying to parse that out a little bit. So I think the answer, so traditionally, it depends on what you mean by Nightscout account. So the DIY method, you actually go set up new accounts for 3 different companies. You set up a github.com account, you set up an mlab.com account, and then you set up usually a Heroku, right? A Heroku.com account. So that's actually 3 different accounts. So I would say that's actually not a Nightscout account at all. Right, that's actually 3 different accounts with 3 different companies that don't even do business with each other. Right, they're just that's all you trying to make one thing happen with one. So I would say we're the only company that provides you with a Nightscout account, and so we don't know of any other companies that provide Nightscout accounts. Now, the other part of that question, which I think is very interesting, and again, we're taking feedback on, is should we offer, this sounds great, right? Should we offer, if I already have Nightscout data, is there any way for me to migrate my old Nightscout data into this service? That's something we're looking at. And if it's a popular demand, then you'll have to, my arm can be twisted. How's that? Twist my arm. Yeah.
If it makes sense, of course. But, we want to spend all of our effort on improving Nightscout itself, right? This is a transition problem. How do I transition from one to another? We don't have an automatic feature for that. So.
Okay, so you talk about the development staff and paying the engineers. Do you have a staff already, or are you the staff right now?
You're probably looking at them, most of them.
Okay, so you are the current staff. Do you know what improvements you want to take to make in Nightscout?
Oh,
we have a long list. Yeah.
Well, just for Dex, when I left, let me put it this way: when I left Dexcom, I had a list of projects that was 100 items deep for things to improve. And a lot of those things I want to drive into Nightscout so that the therapy gets better. That is precisely the idea.
Could you give us one?
Yeah, there's one that was in there for a while, and I think it got removed. Again, I have a humanities background and a background in music, and I am always fascinated by this. It's called sometimes it's called sonification, but the idea of using an oral depiction of data instead of a visual depiction. So I had what was called Nightscout Radio at the time, and it would play your glucose as an audio stream, and you could actually you could actually hear your target range, and when you were leaving your target range and when you were entering your target range, and so you could get the sense of a trend line over time without breaking your attention. because the sense of your sense of hearing is profound. It is the fastest sense there is, and it allows you to take stock of the environment. It is evolutionarily designed to assess the status of your environment without consuming your attention. And so that's the kind of combination. The ambient integrations where that return time to your life, return you to time on task, whether it's sleeping, eating, or playing. Those are the things that are important. And so if I can be sitting and working and my sense of hearing alerts me to a danger condition, not just that I've already crossed a threshold, but rather that I'm going to cross a threshold in the next 20 minutes because I can tell from the sound that it's making. That's powerful. That starts to return time and value to my life, rather than, you know, the right now kind of the interaction with these devices is you pay a lot of money for these devices and then you wear it, and then you're supposed to kind of extract all the value from that device when you go to the doctor, right? And it's like, that's just not, I don't find that to be a humane ethical kind of deal.
That's kind of, that's an interesting feature that's kind of way out there that I've never even thought of, which also probably feeds into the concept of a biofeedback mechanism.
That's right. It becomes a sixth sense. Yeah. That's kind of like, if if you're just asking for, to shoot ideas, that's an idea I've had a long time. We actually implemented it. It was in the code base, and I think it got cleaned out after a while because it needed some work. But there's more basic things that I think affect everyone. So we've talked about technical support. How do I get started with these devices? Do you know, I have to be careful with what I can say here, but the vendors, technical support is not just a problem for patients. Okay, technical support gums up the release of new features, new innovative features into the marketplace. Okay, so you can, I don't think it's a secret that there's multiple diabetes companies that are working on integrations to work together, right? Where there's more than two companies involved in the creation of a single medical healthcare experience for something that's giving you insulin and dosing and on your phone. Okay, so there's like three things that are going on there. And so there might be a company that's specializing in the phone app, a company that's specializing in an insulin pump, and a company that's specializing in a CGM sensor. Okay, let's say something goes wrong with the technology. Which piece of technology went wrong, and who do you call? Well, guess what? That's a serious problem. And it's such a serious problem that it's one of the reasons that we don't have this today. Okay, so Nightscout has all of the data that's needed to solve the problem if Nightscout's working. If Nightscout's working, it's got all the data, right? If you're having a sensor error, Nightscout knows that you're having a sensor error.
You're right, because that's always been a problem. That's always been a problem.
This could be
hardware
that you choose. But they would have access to that same view that you're looking at, regardless of what device they're on. It doesn't matter what app they're using because Nightscout's web-based, right? So there's no app to install. It could be whoever you trust. It can be your friend. It could be the friend that you've had for 20 years. It could be the friend that you just met, but that's had diabetes for 20 years and you trust them. Or it could be the person that you're paying, or it could be the person that your insurance is paying. Right? As a patient, I'm not sure I really care so long as my problems are solved. And that's the goal. Now, the problem is getting the technology to work is just an interstitial goal, of course, right? That's just so that we can get the therapy, right? And so I think that's the next set of problems beyond just the technical support. But so if we can leverage all this and provide a forum based off of Nightscout, where you can go in and get technical support for any of your devices. Doesn't matter if you have a tandem pump, it doesn't matter if you have a Medtronic pump. Nightscout's got all of that data, which means that someone can help you. When do you need help? Is it going to be, do you need help 3 months from now when the insurance is going to pay for another appointment? Or do you need the help like, right now? So that's the next big piece that we see as missing, where if we apply the right effort, we can grease the skids on what makes it through industry just a little faster. And we see that this having what Nightscout provides, where there's a single place on the web where the person that you authorize, the person that you trust, has access to it because you control it. That's a winning solution for us. And so that's the technical support. And then of course, once the devices are working, really what we want is the decision support and in real time. So if you're using if you're taking insulin every day, as we do, multiple times per day, as we do, they call it intensive insulin therapy. So that's the medical practice using that adjective, right? So that tells you something. It doesn't make sense to risk going low every night. I saw a post just like this a couple days ago. It said, I'm having trouble with my basals every night. I'm having trouble. I'm going low every night. So this is now a serious risk to life and limb, right? And this is an existential risk. And the existing solution today is you can either go on Facebook and like reach out into the void and hope to get caught, right? And hope that one of these miraculous, that a Katie DeSimone or a Kate Farnsworth or one of those amazing people is going to catch you, is going to be able to look at your data and then advise you what to do, or you're going to wait until insurance decides for the next quarterly or semi-annual visit. And so that's a situation that I just find utterly unethical and unacceptable. We've got to do better than that. And so once we've got the data access sorted out, and one of the reasons that we know that the data access is working is because we're providing the technology that patients want to use, right? Once you put glucose on a watch, now it's worth it for me to have glucose all the time. And now it's worth it for me to wear the device because now it's fitting into my lifestyle and it's making the difference. So once we do that, and we've got the data, it would be unethical to not use that data as fast as possible and with the greatest impact as possible to help the most number of people as possible. And so that's really what we're aiming to do. And so that is the rough roadmap. Is we've got to fix these data access issues. Then we've got to make sure that the data is going where it needs to go. You can't have hiccups with the battery going down, or with someone ripping off a sensor because it bled and they thought it was broken. It's not working. That's a waste that just won't do. And then once we've got that, we've got to make sure that people are getting the right therapy. And Nightscout, as we see it, is the basis to make all of that happen. It's got the ecosystem with the most number of interoperable devices, the most number of interoperable connections. And it's just obvious to us that that's the platform to then build off of, to connect social networking to the healthcare experience.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions. You can answer them in any way you want. Most of it has to do with support that you're talking about. But the first one is, do you have competition? Who is your competition in this marketplace? And then in terms of support, at some point, do you expect to have a tutorial so the babysitter can understand this? Are you working with other closed loop systems? Are they working with you? Is Tandem interested in working with Nightscout? And will you at some point want to have live or online support?
Where do you start? Let's start.
let's
Let me say something about competition. I mean, one of the top, if you look at the top alternatives to what we're doing, is you could do it yourself. You know, so that's and many people do. You all are doing it yourselves. So we do think there's a place for people who, for whatever reason, don't want to do it themselves, and that's that's what competition is all about. I think this.
We understand that, and it's people are overwhelmed and one less burden. But who else other than Nightscout is a place for data receptacle and analysis?
Yeah, so when we talk about analysis and interpretation of the data, that starts to twist it a little bit differently. So I think one of the things that we're focusing on is first, we got to solve the personal data access. We have to make it acceptable to use. And then we have to solve the tech support issues, as we mentioned. So if we just focus on that tech support piece, every vendor has their own tech support, right? So when you talk about who is the competitor for tech support today, well, I don't know. I'm sure maybe there is a company out there's services like, you know, integrated diabetes services with Gary Shiner. I haven't used them, but I suspect that there's places like that where you could go to your diabetes educator, your CDE, or your nurse practitioner at your local diabetes clinic. And, you know, I have had some good experiences personally. I know that they run workshops at a lot of diabetes, you know, education centers, where that essentially is the goal, right? They try to establish local community meetups, and they try to have workshops on how to use this technology. And that's as a patient, that's one of the only approved sanctioned outlets, right? Where that healthcare professionals and vendors would recommend that, oh, well, if you don't like our 800 number, right? Every vendor has an 800 number, and that is the standard today. You go through their phone tree, and if you don't like that, I don't know, you can go talk to your healthcare provider, right? That is to my knowledge, that is the solution today. And I know that David Panzier, a lot of others have talked about this idea about a diabetes geek squad. But, you know, I guess we're getting into the brainstorming portion of this now, but I'm just looking at what are patients already doing? What are the lead users? What is the lead user activity in the innovation wetlands? What's happening there that speaks to the solutions that the market is finding for these problems? And then what about the nature of those solutions that are going on are indicative of trends over the next 10 years. So when we look at what's happening, we see groups like this one, SoCal Loopers, we see the Siege in the Cloud Off Topic, we see the Looped group, we see the Loop Follow-Up group, we see the Android IPS users group. I'm running out of breath, right? I could keep going and going and going with all the hyper specialization in social media, essentially to cover, in large part, to cover tech support. And why is that? There's a couple reasons for that. One is these are people that know. These are people that know from experience, and these are people that know from empathy how to explain it, because they're struggling with the same thing. That's one piece.
Well, let me throw something.
But the other piece is the democratization. Is that it's easier to get what you need in the time that you need it. And so what needs to happen is for a way for industry to participate in that, so that more people get helped at lower cost with better results, right? So how is that going to, so if that's inevitable over the next 5 to 10 years, how can we make that happen in the next year?
I like this the support question though is kind of aspirational. I mean, we intend to go in that direction, and some of you may know the term. Well, I like to use it. Ben doesn't. This is kind of like a diabetes doula, where it's not a licensed nurse or a nice licensed practitioner, but it's somebody who knows a lot about this stuff. And we intend to enter that business and formalize that around the platform of Nightscout.
Where will you get the people? A doula is the one who helps with childbirth. Is that correct?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but
So,
it's
where do this is a real problem, and which is why all these groups exist, because we can't get that support from a doctor's office. A CDE does not understand loop.
Well, they don't have the data. They don't have the data, so they can't do it because they don't have the data. But Nightscout does, and that's part of what makes the Facebook forums that we've got now work so well. Is that with Nightscout, you get a link, you click on the link, and you're looking at the same view of the same problem. Now, it so happens that the way that we're operating right now in our communities is through self recruitment. We're self-selecting for people that fall into the same social groups as us and that have the same similar experience to us. So the person that you find in a Facebook group is likely to have the same kinds of experiences that you are looking for help with. And so that one-on-one, that empathetic connection that's available through social media is a key part of what we want to lean on when we go to recruit the affiliate network of advisors that are going to provide technical support. We would want to use that same tactic of recognizing that, hey, there are a lot of people out here that, first of all, they want to be able to pay it forward somehow by helping other people. And there's very little opportunity for them to do that in a sanctioned way today. You have to volunteer your time in a kind of in a free form way on one of these social media platforms. And so T1Pal, in some sense, we're getting very speculative here. We're getting very speculative here, but you can think of it as a social media network specifically for medical device support. And so we would create a platform that runs alongside Facebook and runs alongside your Nightscout so that we recruit people that are interested in helping other patients based on their experience and success with helping other patients. So this democratizes healthcare. It kind of mashes up social networks with the healthcare network. And you can think of it very similar as getting the way that we would operate it would be similar to how you get a ride with ride sharing. When you want to ride with ride sharing, you dial up your app and you say, I want help right now. And someone with a driver's license that goes through Uber's network gets connected to you, right? Based on your personal needs where you want to go tonight. And we think that, again, if we look at the needs of the market, what's inevitable over the next five years, we think that that's extremely likely. That, again, it doesn't make sense to wait for hours on a phone call or wait for the next day to get called back. And that for a lot of these issues, we think that smarter automation itself, using the data, can actually prevent a lot of these calls from happening. So again, this is really, I'm just going to leave it there. There's a lot of things I'd like to do, specifically around when you think about availability of CGM data, right? If you're on a closed loop system, you need CGM data for 365 days nonstop, right? Why should your CGM loop give up and stop working to deliver you therapy because the CGM doesn't work for 365 days straight? That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, for some people, it turns out the amount of days that a CGM will stick on a person is personal, and different people fall into different buckets. Some people, the CGM will only last a couple days, 7 days, and other people it'll last much longer. So again, your diabetes may vary, and the solutions are going to need to adapt to accommodate people's lifestyles.
It's really interesting, Ben, because you're really talking about two tracks. The early software developers, you included, ended up going into industry because it's hardware. It's tangible. It's an entity you provide. So people have gone to Tidepool, Dexcom, Beta Bionics. But the soft part, the part that we're all filling in on Facebook, doesn't really have a place to go because we are not medical doctors, and they control what's paid by insurance. And I think
Well, here's the thing. Just to add on to that, Joanne, the technical support, the technician that you talk to on the phone, they don't have any licensing. There's no qualification that Dexcom or Insulet or Medtronic really gives to someone that's answering the phone, other than just to read whatever's in their book. And so that's just where our perspective is saying, surely we know we've got a circle of friends, a couple 10,000 strong now, don't we? That we believe are experts at solving these problems in an empathic way, and can get the job done better with the right tools. And we think that this is still early days, and we're still building those tools.
Okay, let me come back to questions, because I could go on with this forever. Question from Glenn: can we see what the screens look like?
So Nightscout sure.
The Nightscout?
The Nightscout is exactly the same.
It looks the same.
Nightscout. There's a link. There was a link on one of those screens that said "Visit Nightscout," and it's exactly the same Nightscout. We showed all of the screens that are different from Nightscout. We showed all of those. It's just the setup screens. Nightscout itself, once you're in there, it's all the same stuff.
And
all the same plugins work except for the plugins requiring third-party API keys. So overrides.
Okay. So how far back will the data go from the start date, from when one joins T1Pal?
Well, the way that it's set up right now is there's no migration, so there's no way to import old.
But we'll get all your CGM data.
Well, there's no way to import old data, so it starts collecting it when you turn it on. But the import of old data is something we were kind of looking at, but it doesn't do any right now.
Okay, and let's talk about reports. We're familiar with what reports are there, probably could stand to be improved a lot. So the question is, are all the reports currently in Nightscout? Will they continue to be available?
Yeah.
Or are you making changes on that?
Yeah, all the reports are available. Other than these 4 plugins with the third-party API keys, other than that, everything is exactly the same. All the reports, all the plugins. In fact, it might not have come across, but you don't have to. For most of the plugins, you don't even really have to go configure anything, because I just ask you, are you a pump user? Are you using insulin? Are you using a pump? Are you using Loop or OpenAPS or Android APS? And if you answer one of those, there's a dozen plugins that get set up automatically, so you don't even have to do anything.
Okay. Okay, Glenn, you asked this question. Is it called T1Pal when it's displayed, or Nightscout? What do you see?
So the T-Pal, there's a T-Pal site that offers the administration of Nightscout. So that's where you manage your account, and that's where you manage the features for your Nightscout. And that part is called T1Pal. And then when you click in T1Pal, when you click on one of the share links, or you click on the Visit My Nightscout link, it is absolutely Nightscout. It actually takes you to a link that is only for Nightscout.
So there's no T1Pal branding on Nightscout itself.
Okay, question, does it enable loop overrides?
Loop overrides do not work right now because they require the third-party API keys. One of the things that we would be looking to do is partner with the existing vendors. With success, we will be able to partner with vendors. Part of that is what vendors are looking for is actually to see. I mean, I'll be real honest with you. You know, I was at Dexcom for several years, and the management expects to be able to deal with a single organization that represents a constituency, right? So in order for FDA or any of these companies to look at Nightscout and say, oh, Nightscout's doing something interesting, loop overrides, that's a great idea, how do we do that? In order for them to kind of even notice it, what they're asking for is that there be an entity that can be that can represent, say, 30,000 users. And that's exactly what happened today with SugarMate. SugarMate was able to say, we've got 30,000 users in our user database. And that is a big part of the success story with Tandem today. And so when we think about things like loop override, it's a great example that is such a powerful piece of technology. In order for that to be introduced into the market, right, into Tandem and to Tidepool Loop, right, there needs to be an organization that controls Nightscouts, that represents a Nightscout constituency. And so that is a big part of what we're doing. Unfortunately, Nightscout, the loop overrides do not work today, precisely because it's a third-party API secret, which means for me to implement it in T1Pal, I have to take more secrets from the user and then store them. And we're trying to do this in a secure way that protects people's secrets. And so I'm hesitant to open it up, although my arm can be twisted. What I would prefer is to get enough, to be able to represent enough users that the industry would be willing to sign the necessary deals with us, that it can be done securely without messing around with API keys, right? So what I would prefer is you just log in and you turn it on. You say, I want that feature without having to put any API keys anywhere. And that would be a big win. Being able to do that would be a big win for us. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for me to commit to a timeline to do that.
So, there are, you had said the other day, there are a certain number of current Nightscout users worldwide. Will whatever venture money or whoever will capitalize this look at that number, or only look at T1Pal's numbers in terms of investing and making this go forward?
Yeah, unfortunately, in the business discussions I've had so far, if you go into one of these discussions and say, yeah, we've got this open source piece of software and there's somewhere between 30 and 50,000 users, that's not acknowledged as then a reliable piece of information that you can make decisions off of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In other words, they say, well, you don't really know. So there's zero. It's the same as zero. It's indistinguishable from zero.
Well, that explains why we have a price point that's below what you would have to pay if you have to do it yourself. So we're hoping to scarf up a lot of those.
Wait, can you explain that?
Well, I think that's a separate issue.
It is separate, but we have a price point that's below.
Yeah, we didn't go into this very much, but the if you look at what you get, right? If you want Nightscout, so currently we recommend people go to Azure or Heroku or somewhere else. A lot of those solutions with a freemium, we call it a freemium tier, a free usage tier. Heroku actually doesn't guarantee that your site is going to run. And in fact, they actually force it to sleep a certain amount of the time if you run it for free. And similar, the MLab account that gets created for free has a very small amount of data that it gives you. So it has a usage quota. And so that's part of the free tier, is that they've got all these usage quotas. And now, as a Nightscout developer, we tried very difficult to make it so that Nightscout could do as much as possible and still fit inside of these tiny free usage tiers. But so what happens sometimes is you have to go in and it stops working and you have to go delete data or something like that. And that's because the amount of data has exceeded that free usage tier. So one of the benefits here is, of course, it's being paid for, which means that we can pay for the quota. There is no quota. It's unlimited. Your diabetes data is extremely valuable to us, and we don't want to delete it. So that means things like you don't have to delete the data, and we're going to store it for forever, ostensibly. So that means in order to get the same thing, you would have had to have bought the shared plan from MLab. So that's $15 per month for the shared plan at MLab. And then it's for Heroku to make sure it doesn't sleep. The smallest one you can get is their hobby plan, which is $7. So that's like $22 to make sure that your Nightscout works, right? So you're paying $22 to MLab for storage to make sure you don't run out of storage. Then you're paying $7 for hosting or compute for the servers, for the web server to Heroku. And by the way, none of those companies care at all about Nightscout, right? You're paying them, but it's not because they care that Nightscout's running.
Well, we can't run a poll because I didn't set it up ahead of time. But what I'll do on SoCal Loopers is put out the question, which is, what are you paying for hosting? I know I don't pay anything. And yes, maybe every 3 months I clean out MongoLab and whatever else, and it takes 5 minutes. But I understand your price point is based on assuming people are already paying. And I don't know what our community is actually paying at this point. 2 more questions. One is, when there's an upgrade for Nightscout, how quickly will it be pushed out to subscribers? Is it instantaneous once you have an upgrade?
Actually, no, we're open to a lot of feedback there as well. We a large part of what we want to do is eliminate the hassle of upgrades for people. Right now we're on the bleeding edge, actually, of the Nightscout code base. So there's a couple options we've been thinking about. One is actually having once we grow a little bit bigger, we can actually offer a choice of version. And so you could just kind of pick which version you want. Another option is, depending on how the launch here goes, is some of the feedback that we've heard is that hosting in particular isn't seen as valuable, but updates are. So another model that we might think about is like getting rid of the hosting charge and instead charging for updates. I don't really want to do that because then that's I'm not comfortable doing it. So but I'm curious to hear, what is it that people would like? Do they want the latest code? Do they want stable code? Do they want code with certain features in it? Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve?
Yes, they want both. They want everything you just said, and they don't want to pay. I mean, we've already not been paying, so it's really hard to see. So you have an audience here. You have a substantial audience, and I'm going to guess the majority are on Nightscout or have a Nightscout account, whether they use it or not. What should make them jump into T1Pal?
Well, like I said, we view this as a collaboration with community to some extent. even though we are a for-profit company. And that means that, I'll just double down again and say that the more people using Nightscout, the better it is for this business. And so that's actually what we want. We want more people using Nightscout, and we want more people getting the benefits of real-time decision support, real-time technical support, and solving the needs of intensive insulin therapy. That said, we know that it's funny that it's true. You haven't paid, but the developers do pay for the rent that developers have to pay as they're coding, and the computers that the developers have to pay when they're coding, and the servers that we have to pay for when we're coding and giving people access to these features. And so I would like to be able to continue helping people, but I need to be able to pay my rent in order to do that. And this seems like the best deal for now. Again, as we move into the technical support and into those interpretation of the data features, and as we work closer with industry, we think that, like many other digital services, that we will be able to open up a new tier that doesn't impact any patient cost. But the fact of the matter is, right now, is that Nightscout, when we talk about it being free, we have to kind of unpack that, and we have to say, well, it was free for the person that went to GitHub and put it on Heroku, but it wasn't free for the developer to put it up there in the first place.
So, question: what about when Tide-Pool Loop is available? How will that impact you and Nightscout and T1Pal?
Well, we don't know, is the honest answer. I can tell you what I hope for, but I bet, again, this is a pretty savvy audience, and we've kind of gone through a couple. I think you might be able to guess what I'm hoping for, which is that we've got enough. Again, industry and regulators, when they see that there's no one that can be responsible for constituency of users, it makes it harder for them to collaborate with those users. And so there's certain changes we've known about the G4 and the G5 obsolescence plans, and those are initial steps in part of a multi-step plan. And there are changes that are coming that will change the way that our community works. And if we want to protect the kinds of things that we're doing and protect the innovation pipeline, so that we're getting access to features like loop overrides, and we're seeing not only that can you do it yourself, but they actually get delivered by companies so that you don't have to do it yourself. If that's part of what we want, then part of what will help that to occur is for an organization to be able to represent a constituency of Nightscout users.
Got it. We're running late now, and your dad's probably getting tired. But is it? I'm going to ask if you have any questions for the people that are online tonight. One or two real quick questions, and we'll give you their feedback. They can type it into chat. Is there anything you want them to tell you, or you want to understand from this group of fairly articulate users who've been doing this for quite a while?
Well, one question I've got while Ben is still thinking is, what is this Nightscout thing worth? You get yours free, then are most of the users like you, or what is the right price point for this?
In fact, if you're getting yours free, just write yes in chat, and we can count those up. From what I've been watching, several of us are free. The only cost, someone said, is a $100 Apple developer account for Loop. Mine's been free for 4 or 5 years. And I think most are, I'm seeing yes, 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 free. So most people in this group have been with Nightscout for a while and have probably jumped into doing the code and have no problem working through that information, so they have not paid. Someone wrote, I think these developers have created something amazing and they deserve our support. It's a win-win, absolutely. But the rest were getting, one, I paid $7 per month for Heroku. So that was your price point originally, I think, was the Heroku number.
Yeah.
So you've exceeded that price.
Well, no, because it's not. It's Heroku plus MLab, so it would be 22.
Okay.
But so I guess I'm more interested in going beyond hosting with the community. You know, when we talk about getting tech support or even getting decision support, you know, what does it mean to find? I've been drawing a big distinction between friends and family you trust and experts you choose. And how does that resonate with folks? Is Nightscout the tool that you would prefer to get connected to the friends and family you trust and the experts you choose? Is that the right problem? Is that the biggest missing piece in diabetes, right? And what does it mean to solve those things? So what does it mean to you to be able to talk to someone on Facebook about about a problem that occurs versus calling in to tech support? And how does it I'm envisioning ways that we're going to combine Facebook and social media and all of that into one thing, right? And I'm wondering if that resonates with other people, that you don't want to spend an hour on the phone with tech support. You should be able to post whatever your issue is, and the data should be there, and then you should be able to get help within minutes to hours from someone that actually understands that issue.
You're getting yeses on that. You're getting absolute yeses. Yeah, we would like further development of the software so that it's more robust. Definitely readable reports that our medical team can read, and possibly some training for them so they actually know what they're doing, which doesn't ensure anything. But Nightscout can contain everything, which would be wonderful. And I think that's where the importance is. And certainly the free social networks work for us, obviously, because no other network does work for us.
Right. Well, right. So I'm trying to imagine a new network that's something of a hybrid, I guess. It's something right in between Facebook and the traditional tech support call, and it's app based and it's social media based. But we've got to make it sustainable and safe somehow. You know, we've done a fairly good job with kind of rolling our own rules and governance. But I think, you know, one of the things that's needed though is to make sure that any issues that need to get reported actually do get reported. And what I mean by that is, you know, if someone's device is actually broken, the device manufacturer actually does need to hear about it. And in fact, not only does the device manufacturer need to hear about it, the manufacturer is actually responsible for reporting back to a regulatory body at some point. So in the U.S., that's FDA. In Europe, there's a suite of different regulatory bodies that, depending in your locality, you are responsible for reporting issues about your device. And so that's actually one of the really troublesome pieces, is that even though for patients the social media experience can be so much better, we're somehow, by doing that, we're now not meeting the needs for public health anymore. And So that's something we're interested in doing, is going through the best of these groups, right? So which groups should we go through? How would we recruit, and how should we compensate people to do this? Should there be any compensation? Should it be pay as you go, or should it be subscription based? Assuming this works for any device, right? Yeah, so these are the kind of things we're thinking a lot about.
Let me do this because it is getting late and we've got people all over the world. You're part of SoCal Loopers, so if someone wants to post a question to you, can they just tag you on the post on our group, and then you can get back to whoever has questions for you?
Yeah, I love it. That would work great in the meantime. And I suspect we'll probably go set up our own Facebook group. So we're not every group has its own purpose, right? So we don't want to water down. We don't want to take away from the mission of these other groups. So that would be lovely, though. We would welcome that.
Yeah, anybody who wants to reach Ben, just tag him. Write your message to Ben. He'll get that. And I want to thank you for the time, and thank you, Earl, for staying up so late. This is an issue that I think is very dear to our hearts. We're all trying to live well here. And so thank you for all the efforts you've made and improvements you've made to the technology on our behalf, and continuing. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate it. It's really great.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Thanks for letting us share this time with you. It's been a lot of fun, and we hope to keep hearing from people.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben and Earl.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.